Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by the amazing Dice Rollen. Dice, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I am doing very well. I'm so excited we were able to make this work. We were lucky enough to get connected to the Scares, created by horror addicts, and I was able to watch some of your stuff, and I got super excited about this idea. Since I'm so much in love with your channel, I figure let's talk about that first. Dice is a content creator and writer based in New Mexico, has been making horror-centered videos for over 6 years now, staying on the grind. That is so awesome.
I try.
Um, no, I think it's great. Dice loves horror media and collects several horror movies, memorabilia, autographs, action figures, art, etc. On the channel, Dice covers movie and book reviews, countdown lists, let's plays, narrations, and things you didn't know about horror movies. And the best thing is, if I'm talking good about this channel, obviously I'm a fan. And for you to find it, you don't have to go far because all of their social media links are right down here in the description below. So make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and following them on social media. So, Dice, a little bit about your channel that I didn't cover already. What can you tell us about your channel, how you got started, and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Let's see. Well, I guess I can kind of blame, as I'm sure most other content creators can, other bigger content creators for giving me the idea. The Nostalgia Critic, Mark Guy, all these people were very big inspirations and pushes. Markiplier being the final push to get me to start my channel, which I did in 2014. But the funny thing is I didn't start in horror. I didn't know what I was going to do, thus the name, I guess. But 2 years into it, someone pointed out that I seem to like Halloween, the season, and spooky stuff, so why not focus on that? And off we went with that, and just continued till we are here.
Right. And I love the fact that you blend so many different parts of the genre together into one channel. There's a lot of people that are scared to do that. They like to find their niche and stick with it. But you
Yeah.
like to blend all these different aspects of horror together. Now, is that part of like your personality of all the different types of horror? You're not just like I like my highbrow horror. Like you seem like the type of person that just want to encompass every single thing on your channel. Is that who you are as a person when it comes to horror as well?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, they always talk about when you're making content online, find your niche. My niche was just horror, just
Mhm.
all of it. So yeah, my taste in horror varies wildly. So if I can't incorporate that into what I'm doing, then I don't think it would work too well. I'd get bored with one thing or the other. So yeah, I like to anything that grabs my attention and I think is cool or I think I can make something out of. I want to do something with. So that could be
And
anything from 80s stuff that my brother hates that I really like to newer stuff that people think is the next Shining or something like that. Yeah.
see, and what I love about that is like the things you didn't know about horror movies. Like I love how you try to be educational with your stuff
Yes.
too, but you're also I hate saying the word fan because it's such a weird word for me, but like you are very, very much in connection with the people that follow your channel. You
Oh
want
yeah.
to include them into the things that you're doing. And I
Absolutely.
think that that's absolutely perfect. Like, 'cause that's what I love too. I love doing live videos. I love doing my first horror movie and learning about people's love of horror and how it started. So, what makes it so that you want to be more driven to work with the people that watch your channel?
Just kind of what you said, engagement.
Mhm.
I can't say this for everybody, of course. There are, every once in a while, one of those people, but for the most part, the horror community is very much like me in that I don't see myself just because I'm in front of a camera. I don't see myself as being better than anybody else who's watching my videos or someone else's videos. I was there once. I still am. And I really, really love getting feedback. That's something that really keeps me going and making my content is if someone leaves a comment saying, hey, I didn't know about this movie and I wouldn't have if you hadn't mentioned it. And I think that's great. And I just keep going with that, incorporating people more. Tell me about this. What do you think about that? It's a
Mhm.
feedback oriented thing I do, I guess.
See, and I do got to say two things about that. One, I am different. I know I'm better than everybody that watches this. I'm joking, but one thing you said, like people that are like, oh, I would have never known about this movie had it not been for you. That's me with Sometimes They Come Back. Like watching all these people that have grown to love Sometimes They Come Back, because the amount that I talk about it, I think is super awesome. So that's one thing for me that I agree with you. When that person hits me up like, hey, I never heard of House from 1986 until I started watching your stuff, or Sometimes They Come Back. That's my favorite Stephen King, adaptation. And I have people hit me up like, hey, I finally watched Sometimes They Come Back because I watched a video you did on it. And that's a great feeling. It's like
Yeah,
introducing your kids to something, like your kids loving it. Like that's how it feels
yeah,
to me. Like a friend that I met through doing this now loves something that I grew up loving. So it's
yeah,
amazing. And I'm so glad that you are still in that area of being a content creator, that you still get that feeling in your stomach of success, like
yeah,
that feeling of warmth when you've introduced somebody to something that you loved for so long.
yeah. No, that I just like what you said. I've had comments like that, and I'm like, so I it's very much I compare it very much to this, and I think it's a good analogy is again like what you said, introducing a friend to something that you love or you just recently discovered and you can't stop talking about. So to bring someone else into that, I think is really cool, especially if they end up enjoying it.
Yeah. And anybody that's a repeat viewer knows I do not condone drug use. Don't do drugs, please. Give hugs, not drugs. But horror to me is like drugs. You
Yeah,
get that high, and you're constantly chasing that dragon, trying to get that high again from all these different horror movies. And that all starts with our first one. So segue, Dice. I've had an amazing time talking with you, but I want to get to the reason why we're here. Let's go back to the past and talk about how horror started for you, your first horror
yeah.
movie, and Dice, your first horror movie was.
Gremlins, the first Gremlins. Here's what's really funny is that when I was a kid, I avoided horror. I avoided scary things.
Oh,
I didn't like scary things. If anything looked even remotely scary in a movie, even if it wasn't horror, I would cover my eyes and try to look away. But at the age of about 8, my mom, who is kind of to blame for the horror gateway, as it were, she sat me down and my brother for Gremlins. And I was scared by it. I don't think at the time I could really understand, comprehend, or articulate the concept of melding comedy and horror, which now is my favorite horror subgenre. But she had me watch Gremlins. So that was the first introduction to horror I think I really got.
and something I love about what you just said, Dice. My favorite subgenre of horror is horror comedy. My first horror movie was House from 1986.
That's a fun one. I
So
like that one.
yeah, so I think that really does have an impact. Your first one being Gremlins, obviously a horror
Yeah.
comedy as well. I think that kind of sticks with us. Like this is the first time we felt this feeling. I think this is my favorite type of horror now that I'm older, and it's amazing how alike we can be, even though we grew up 2,000 miles apart, and we're very different people, and probably they got bullied the same amount, for being horror dorks and punk rock kids in high school. But it is what it is, because now you're the shit and I love you. So we know Gremlins is such a fantastic movie. And I got my little Mogwai, my little Gizmo right here hanging out with us. Which scene was it from Gremlins, Dice, that affected you the most?
The one that stood out the most to me, honestly, that stuck with me for years, even after I really didn't see Gremlins for most of my childhood, teen years, and into my early adulthood. The scene that really stuck with me was when Kate was talking about her father and how when he went down a chimney, he died there, essentially. I think it was the combination of, wow, that's grim. There were these little green creatures running around a moment ago. What happened? And just the concept of that with Christmas, I'm like, okay. That's the other part of why the comedy and the dark element of horror really just set me off for a while there at age 8.
Right. And That's another thing I was going to ask later in the episode, but you kind of touched on it now. So let's bump that up here a little bit. Is Gremlins a Christmas movie?
I think so. Yes, I do. It's
See, whenever
very
people are like,
much.
is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're talking about Gremlins. Okay, let's
Yes.
shift back.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It's for another thing, another talk show. Come on. No, I do think Gremlins is Christmas. Yes.
Look at the caroling scene alone. Like, that
It's
there,
very
like,
clearly centered around Christmas. It just happens
yeah,
to have these little murderous creatures.
that's so great. Like, and did you ever watch Gremlins 2? The new batch?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Are
That was much later. I didn't see that at the same time, or even just a few years later. I didn't. I saw, well, let's say rewatched Gremlins not that long ago, maybe less than 4 years ago. And I realized, oh, there's a sequel. Okay, obviously sequels can be kind of hit or miss sometimes, but I want to explore. So it's encouraging when you have returning cast. That helped a lot. I watched the new batch and I do quite like it. I showed it to my family as well. They liked it. So this is one of those good cases where the sequel is good.
Sure. So would you say that you're a bigger fan of Gremlins or Gremlins 2?
Uh well, let's see, that's going to get me in trouble. Gremlins is really, really good. It's a classic, obviously, some prime Joe Dante work. But I might, on certain days, lean a little bit more towards the new batch.
Yeah.
Well, Christopher Lee's in there.
Mhm.
They've got a bigger budget. They're having more fun with it. It's not straight up horror. It's fine, but it's a little bit more fun, maybe.
You get Gizmo being Rambo in Gremlins 2.
Yes, you
If
have
anybody
that too.
wants to
Yeah.
talk shit about you saying Gremlins 2 is better, just look at Gizmo as Rambo. Okay, listen, I completely understand. So another thing I want to talk to you about, we talked about which scene affected you the most from Gremlins, but what would you say your favorite scene from Gremlins is?
I freeze every once in a while. I apologize for that.
Well, that's okay.
That's my internet right there.
Well, what would you say your favorite scene from the original Gremlins would be? We know which one affected you the most, but
Yes.
what would you say your favorite scene is?
Now that's something I haven't thought about.
It's funny because this is a movie that has so many different memorable scenes.
It
I'm
does.
like you, when people talk to me about this movie, usually it comes down to like the Christmas tree. Like that's
Sure.
usually
I mean,
one that's
mom is a badass. We know this.
yeah.
So that's a good scene. I like that. Just her dealing with this because you think, oh no, she's gonna die, but she ends up taking out like 75%. I don't know. I think that scene, I like that. Of course, the climax is really, really important, and if you do it well, you're gonna remember it. But I like the climax of Billy and Gizmo facing off against Stripe. I think that's probably my favorite portion.
Yeah, and I can understand that as well. We always love a good ending. So another question I've been asking recently, obviously with Hollywood now, remakes, requels, sequels are kind of all the rage right now.
Yeah.
Is Gremlins a movie that you would like to see remade today?
I don't know, because just to be how that would work out, because there's the 80s charm to it that really adds another layer.
I just think for me, the thought of a new Gremlins movie being CGI really scares me.
Yeah.
That's where I get nervous because
Yeah.
I love the practical effects in these movies.
I mean, they were great, no, but they were pretty impressive, and they knew how to hide the flaws. So I would say no, I don't want to see Gremlins remade. If they want to make a sequel, please keep it practical. But other than that, you can go nuts with sequels if you want, but just leave Gremlins alone. Leave Gremlins alone. Don't remake it. It's fine.
It's so funny because I feel the same way about Gremlins as I do The Gate. Like, I
Ah,
don't want to see this movie remade because I love it so much the way it was. But if you do remake it, I'm gonna watch it. Like, it's definitely gonna happen.
yeah,
Like,
it's kind of a given. It's part of the career path, you know. You got to see it
right.
at least.
So, Dice, I've had an amazing time talking about your first horror movie, being Gremlins, and what that movie means to you. But now I do want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here. My little
Okay.
buddy Ghostface has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Dice? What is your
Ah,
favorite horror movie of all time?
oh God. Well, it's these two that I go with, and it's a rare case where someone has heard of either one. It's even rarer when they've heard of both. So my favorite is Phantom of the Paradise and The Frighteners.
Oh, The Frighteners is amazing. I've never heard, Phantom of the Paradise, but this is so funny because I just had Victoria Beckham on the show that we met during the
Yeah,
Oscars as well, and her first horror movie was The Frighteners, and I just went and bought that movie and watched it for the first time. That movie is fantastic. That is a great, great movie.
yeah,
Michael J. Fox is amazing in that movie. The twist to it is great. The
yeah,
villain is fantastic. The comedy parts between the ghost friends all lands. Like, I am. That's one of those movies. I'm bummed that I never seen earlier in my life because it's
yeah.
that good.
Yeah, I stumbled upon it quite accidentally, as a matter of fact. You know how on cable, some cable providers you can search for specific actors or whatever. I've been a Michael J. Fox fan for a long time, and I found The Frighteners because of him. And I'd never heard of it before, and I was like, okay, fine, let's check it out. And every time it would come on after that, I would watch it and pick up on something different. That was my introduction to Peter Jackson, Dee Wallace, Jeffrey Combs. I already knew about John Aston, of course, but that was my introduction to that style of filmmaking. And
What a
that's
cast too.
yeah, no, that's God. Now that I know more about horror, I'm like, God, okay, go off, Mr. Jackson. Holy hell! So I'm really enthusiastic about the Frighteners and Phantom of the Paradise. But Phantom of the Paradise is that's a whole different beast.
Well, I just wrote down Phantom of the Paradise so I can make sure I check that out, and I'll let you
Oh, I
know
highly recommend it.
immediately what I think about that.
Yeah,
Um,
if you like goofy stuff, well, a good comparison, which it always does get compared to, is the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
oh,
Uh, the
yeah.
funny thing is, it came out a year before Rocky Horror Picture Show. So yeah, the world wasn't ready, but Winnipeg, Canada was very ready.
We're gonna go back to Michael J. Fox. Maybe you guys aren't ready for this, but your
Yeah,
parents are gonna love it, or your kids are gonna love it.
your kids are gonna love it.
It's funny because you brought up Michael J. Fox, and I've talked about this a million times. My favorite movie of all time is Back to the Future. I think the first
Mm,
Back to the Future is my favorite movie of all time. The only perfect movie that's ever been made, in my opinion, is Pee Wee's Big Adventure. But when it comes to being my favorite movie, the first Back to the Future has everything,
oh yeah,
and Bob Zemeckis, who worked on Back to the Future, also worked on The Frighteners,
yeah,
and you can really feel that type of vibe with the
yeah.
comedy when it lands in that movie. You're like, yeah, Robert Zemeckis and Michael J. Fox definitely
I
worked on
know
this
who did
together.
this.
When the guy takes the pillow, Jeffrey Combs, when he takes the pillow out and he puts it down on the seat, the donut pillow, when he's
Yeah,
like, you think he's reaching for a gun or something, and he pulls out the donut pillow. Like, it's so great.
that's
Um,
where you go. Oh, okay, got it.
yes.
Okay.
So, Dice, I do want to bounce back. I got one last question for you before I let you go. We're going to bounce back to Gremlins. And what we're going to do is we're going to rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not judging it on production, score, direction, acting, nothing like that. We're not being critics. What we're going to do now is judge this movie strictly on how much it affected you on first viewing. So, 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. What would your ranking of Gremlins be?
Ooh, how much it affected me? Wow. 0 to 5, you say?
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably go with 5. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it affected me quite a lot as a kid. Like I said, when that's essentially my introduction to horror. Um, yeah, five I would say is a pretty good rating for that. So clearly, if I revisited it and went, I like this now, I like this, and my favorite subgenre and everything. So I think it influenced quite a lot.
Right. And I'm with you. It's very hard for me to watch something critically and give it a perfect score, but on how things affect me, there's been plenty of movies that I can give a perfect score to. So I love that. I love how genuine and honest that is. So, guys, we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll. The curtain's about to drop. But before it does, all of Dice's social media links and YouTube link is down here in the description. So make sure you're following them on social media. Make sure you're subscribing to their YouTube channel. You're not going to do it for her, for them, or for me. You're going to do it for yourself, and you're going to love it. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're checking it out. I promise you, you won't regret it. So, Dice, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.